Friday, brother. How are you?
Happy Friday, my sister. We call it Fire Fridays around here because, listen, this is the month of May. You might as well call it the month of M4MM because we have been blazing this week, or this whole month, man. So I'm excited, man. How are you doing on this Friday?
Listen, my kid graduated from high school. Congratulations, Layla. Layla graduated yesterday.
And congratulations to you, man. Like, yeah, all your kids that graduated from college. Look at you. I know you must be a proud mama.
I'm a proud mama.
You did your job, right? You did.
I'm a proud mama. So you guys, I'm gonna show you. I want y'all to show my baby some love today. I'm gonna put a little picture up, but later on. But yeah, she had a great graduation ceremony yesterday, and yeah, my two kids. I have one son who's getting ready to graduate from FAM this fall, and Layla's headed to FAM. So we are excited. The birds are out the nest. Goodbye, birdies. Bye bye.
All right, Rattler Nation out there.
And Rattler Nation. Yes. So listen.
To both Layla and Brian, man. Y'all are killing it. Y'all are definitely walking in the legacy of both your mom and your dad. And, I'm proud of you as well. And I know they're proud of you too.
Absolutely. So listen, everybody. I know people are starting to come in. They come in, they trickle in, and then we get a boost. But make sure you're sharing right now. Share this because this is going to be such a dynamic conversation today. We are celebrating still our 5-year anniversary, then versus now. Where were we 5 years ago? Where our guests were 5 years ago, and kind of like where are we now? And the new, just the newness that's coming into the organization. So without further ado, and we got a special guest today. So without further ado, let me bring everybody up. So first we have Simone Kason, our
everybody
president. And then we have Natalie Bonner, our Mississippi State Director. And then we have Mr. Eric Foster, our National Policy Director for Cannabis and Hemp. And last but not least, our special guest that we have. So happy to have you. So good to have you in the family. It's the Banks and Company. Mr. Lloyd Banks is in the house with us. What's going on, Mr. Banks?
I cannot hear.
You can't hear us? Yeah. You may have to check your mic, and then you may have to
drop out,
exit, and come back in. Yep, but that's okay. We'll hold it down and wait for you. So listen, everybody. I mean, it's our anniversary. We've been having a great month or what have you. If you guys can just introduce yourself, introduce your business, where you are. Simone, let's start with you. Tell everybody hi. Tell them who you are.
Hey, everybody. My name is Simone Kason. I have the pleasure of being the Michigan chapter president for Minorities for Medical Marijuana. I also own Canis Capital Insurance Agency and Canis Capital Security. So I'm so happy. We do everything from seed to sale and everything in between, all of your protection needs. We also have the largest suite of insurance products in Michigan, Illinois, and Massachusetts.
Absolutely. Thank you. And welcome, Simone. And then next we have Natalie Bonner. Hey, Natalie, tell everybody who you are and where you're located. And we can hear you.
What about now? Hi, everyone. I'm Natalie Bonner, coming to you from Biloxi, Mississippi. I'm the Mississippi State Chapter President of Minorities for Medical Marijuana, co-founder of Champagne Art and CBD here in Biloxi, Mississippi, where we're bringing everyone a different kind of wellness experience. We've only been open in our brick and mortar for 5 weeks, but Blue Lotus Creations, we have several businesses in the cannabis space, and we've been very blessed that they are still ticking in this space, as no matter how tumultuous our industry is. And we do wellness products. We serve as an art gallery, so it's champagne for your mind, art to stimulate you, as well as CBD for the wellness of your body. So I'm so happy to be here.
We're so happy to have you. And we're going to talk about Mississippi and that mess that happened last week. We wanted to address that. We want to celebrate you, Natalie, and your new establishment, but we definitely have to talk about that today, especially with this man right here who has, Simone has this like arsenal of people in Michigan, her team.
I
do. And she gave us a little glimpse of the power of the team, and thank the Lord she let us share a little bit and this gentleman, Mr. Eric Foster, who has been a part of Simone's go-to connectivity to the Michigan market, and I see why she latched onto him. This brother is fire. We're so happy to have you, Eric Foster. Introduce yourself and tell us where you're located.
Thank you, Roz. I appreciate that, and thank you, everybody. I'm Eric Foster. I'm in Michigan. I'm with Banks and Company. And Banks Company, we're a public affairs firm headquartered in Southfield, Michigan. And we've been in business for 8 years, and we've been in the commercial marijuana and hemp sector consulting for 4 years now. This will be the 4th year. And I'm also now the National Policy Director for Cannabis and Hemp for Minorities for Medical Marijuana. And really excited about that because it gives an opportunity to really delve in both at the federal level and at the individual state by state level with respect to how they're operating the commercial marijuana sector. Where do we need to build the opportunities for Black and brown people in the industry? And how do we address legislation and administrative rules and appropriative decisions? So it's a lot of fun. I'm a policy guy, but I also take policy and turn it into how do we engage people. So I'm a people person too. So, you can be, I'm probably a unicorn in that fact of being a people person, a data person, and a relationship person. But I appreciate that. And thank God for that. And glad to be a part. Man. Thank you, Simone, for bringing me into the team.
Yeah, man, listen.
Hey,
and we'll forgive you for your University of Miami shirt today. It's okay. Just
you don't forget the you. You don't forget the you. It's still always about the you.
Listen, can I say something about Eric, man? I like this brother from day one. Obviously, when I heard his name, I was like, he got to be a good dude. We share the same name, He spelled it with a C, and I'll forgive him for that. But that's okay. But let me say this about from his command of policy, right? Yeah. Roz and I have been doing this for a while now, and we've been through many different states, met with many different people, from lobbyists to so on. And I have rarely come across people such as Eric, who has a strong of a command of the policy that you have, Eric, and it has been impressive to hear you speak, to hear you break down policy, and like you said, not just understand the policy and the data, but how does that relate to people? And I'm just saying, from the day Roz came to me and said, we're thinking about Eric Foster for that, I said yes. I had heard you a few times, and hats off to you. I'm excited to meet Mr. Banks today, because I've always known there's another side to the whole company and other people involved. So just excited to have you guys here. Banks and Company, you guys are doing amazing things alongside Simone up there in Michigan, and we're excited that you guys are a part of the organization and the team now.
Yeah, that's how I look at it. When you bring one in, you bring the whole
thing, the whole family.
Yeah. So without further ado, I want to make sure we were celebrating our anniversary, but we want to get Banks and Company. I'm like, you know what? We can do both, because the celebration of the anniversary is all about where we were and where we are now. And just by the grace of God, how we have been able to thrive and to flourish and to grow. And shout out to Stanley Atkins, Aisha, thank you guys so much for just tuning in. But definitely just my interaction with Lloyd Banks and your smartness of having someone like Eric Foster on the team. And we need to have connections to Black-owned business. Don't get it twisted. This is a Black-owned business in the space, and we want to celebrate you today. And so I want to give you a chance to introduce yourself, sir. Tell me a little bit about Banks and Company and what you guys do.
Okay, excited to be here. Thank you all for having me. So Banks and Company, as Eric indicated, and Roz, I saw an episode last week, and there was some theme music. I'm like, where's that music from last week? I mean, that music you guys were doing.
We was partying. I lowered the temperature just a little bit.
Oh, okay,
just a little bit. Because we was partying last week. Yes, we were.
You were. But Banks and Company is a public affairs firm. I started the company, I say officially, when I started having a team of people, and Eric was one of the first individuals to join the team. We've been knowing each other for over 20 years. And so we started out as doing political consulting. I'm also doing management consulting work. And now, finally, we've settled on, we are a public affairs agency. We provide services in the areas of public relations and marketing. We do diversity, equity, and inclusion work. And we also do government relations and lobbying. And that's how Eric and I actually met 20 plus years ago, working for competitors doing marketing and government relations work. And so we've been out here, and we got a list of interesting industries we've been involved in. So we go from cannabis to oil and gas to death care to retail. We've worked all of those different industries. And part of what we do is strategy. And so it's such a good fit for the work that Eric do. I really just sit back and Eric tells me what to do. And as of late, I always hear Simone said this. So I think Simone is telling me what to do too. And so it's all good. We love M4MM.
We take all of it.
It's been a great platform for us on a national level as well. So.
And listen, the beautiful part about it is that you don't only just do cannabis, but you do that. And we as an organization want to tap into the strength that you have and the resources, and also push the folks that are in the industry, operators and businesses, to your suite. To your business as someone that we can trust, that will make sure that they're taken care of and they're given, the right resources and information. So with that being said, I want to kind of shift over to Simone. And the question is, then versus now. Simone, where were you 5 years ago? And how did you, 5 years versus now? Talk about it.
So 5 years, I wasn't in cannabis. So where was I 5 years? I was.
Yeah, that's what we want to know. We going back down memory lane. So
okay, well, 5 years ago, I was miserable. I was working in an investment program, right? I was an investment advisor, and I was dealing with mass affluent. I was managing about $100 million in assets. And you would think with all of that money and everything, I was miserable. I didn't have a white lady voice. People was getting on my nerves. I was working with 2 advisors, both white male, and my job was to bring the money in, and then we was gonna split it 3 ways. It was a horrible thing, and that's when I quit.
And you said goodbye. And when did you know cannabis or this industry was where you thought you might enter into? What was the
turning point
and the M4MM connection?
Yep. So I moved back to Michigan, right? I decided I just couldn't do it anymore. I had got to the point where it was so paining to go to work. And some crazy reason, I moved from Chicago, from being there for 20 years, and moved to Michigan. And Proposition 1 was coming up. And I kept seeing this over and over again, and I was thinking I was just going to have a regular firm, and I kept seeing Proposition 1, which was what was going to make Michigan's adult use. And so I told a friend then, he asked me, he said, well, what you going to do with the rest of your life? You're here or whatever. I said, I'm going to insure cannabis businesses. And he said, can you do that? I said, I don't know. And so I Googled, and at that time, there were only about 15 actual agencies in the whole United States that had anything to do with cannabis. So I got registered and I did everything, but I didn't have any businesses. And so to kind of, I wanted to get into the industry. I knew that there was a lot of opportunity there. I knew that they didn't have banking, but it was mandatory for them to have insurance. And I reached out to you, Roz. And I had reached out to you before when I first got back. So this was maybe a year later. And I sent an email and I said, hey, I'm new in the cannabis space. I wouldn't mind, joining the Michigan chapter. And there was transitioning with the chapter president. And so you were kind enough to schedule a call with me. And I talked to you. You said, well, hey, we kind of got some transitioning going on. Would you be interested in possibly being the chapter president? I was never thinking this. I totally never thought that she would say this. So then she had me interview with Eric Range, and I ended up, taking it on. In the last 2.5 years, we've really been able to grow the chapter. I have to say, all of my success has been either via Roz or Banks and Company. Banks and Company has taught me policy. They have taught me the real meaning of Wall Street and Main Street, and it has just been a joy to be in this position the whole last 2.5 years. It is amazing. It's probably the best fraternity sorority that you could ever join. M for life, right? So
for life. But
for life.
I think
said all of it.
Go ahead, E.
I say it all the time. You find M for MM, you find your tribe.
You find your tribe. It has been amazing from me. And then even to talk about one thing that I don't know a lot of people know. When I first started in this, I was very, very green. And so Eric would come. Everybody talks about me and these great speaking engagements. But what nobody knows is for the first 1.5 years of me doing speaking engagements, Eric would come to my office and we would have coaching sessions like debates with cards and everything to help me remember the policies, the procedures. So people don't know all of the work that goes on behind this. When they say, "Oh, Simone was dynamite," they don't know that Eric was been in my office for the last 4 days coaching me on talking points. So it was serious to get me to this place.
No, and we're so happy where you are. And to see your professional growth, we're going to want you to come and talk about where you are now, just professionally, and just the magnificent things that you're doing and things that you can share with us. Some things I know you may not be able to share yet. But Natalie, when it comes to you, where were you 5 years ago? And where was your first intersection with knowing you're going to get in this industry and with M4MM?
5 years ago, I'm a defense contractor. So I spent my entire 33-year career in defense contracting, special operations. I grew up in the war on drugs era. I had all of that conditioning in my head about everything negative about cannabis. And then I was listening to some people in Florida, because my company is headquartered out of Florida. And his son had gone to Colorado and he was growing cannabis in his closet in Colorado. And he was making $10,000 a week doing that. And in my mind, I'm thinking just another drug dealer, right? And then I said that, but not that directly. And then they educated me on it. And then I started doing research. And then I was in Atlanta, was one of my home bases, and started hearing more and more about M4MM and learning. And then I bought some property in Mississippi and came down here to work on that. And I knew I'm born and raised in Mississippi, and I knew we were going to be the last state to legalize. I knew it was.
Can't hear you.
Natalie, we can't hear you.
And can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yes, we can.
And whatever Mississippi did, it was going to be to keep people of color from participating in the industry. And I reached out to Roz and talked to her about being in Mississippi. And Eric, I don't know if you remember this, you were like, "Sister, you got a road ahead of you. You need to read this book." And it's been true.
Well, Mississippi has a historical, when it comes to things of politics, y'all have a special history. Let's just say it that way.
And here's what's crazy, guys, is that I'm born and raised in Mississippi, but see, I grew up on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, which gives you a false premise about what Mississippi really is. Because we're next to New Orleans and Mobile, so my idea of my home state was, until I started hearing more, especially when cannabis legalization became more of the subject. And then I went up on the Capitol Hill as part of Initiative 65, and I started really getting in tune in, how they were really making moves to block out people of color.
Yeah.
And started getting involved with 3MA and other. At that time, David Singletary was running for governor of Mississippi. I kind of tied my horse to him. He lost, but he gave us visibility. And here we are now with what we thought was a successful initiative that has just gone down the toilet. But now we have our representative Dekeither Sanders, and he's asking the governor to call for a special session in July where everything about Initiative 65 will be put on the floor for reinstatement. So
wow. I mean, it's just when you have 74% of the population in Mississippi that votes for an initiative, and when you have a Supreme Court justices for the state of Mississippi that basically rip that whole entire vote out from underneath you.
Completely. And then Roz, to add on to that, I don't remember, we had just gotten the Secretary of State to approve Initiative 77 for adult use, and we were going to be able to start the signature collection process in July. And this is just so, and I know I've totally digressed from what you asked me, but this is just something that we are living every day here. I was on the Ivory earlier, and she's trying to get nurses into any rewritten narrative, in any rewritten legislation that happens. But we aren't giving up. We just know that some people aren't going to get reelected if they don't get on board and help us get this back on track.
Period. And listen, and our audience out here, everybody that's out here, you guys, make sure you're following Natalie Bonner. If you're interested in understanding about Mississippi, there's an M4MM Mississippi group. Just put that M4MM Mississippi in the group search. Stay on top of it, because, and we're going to talk a little bit more about Mississippi and some of the things that we can be doing as advocates and as people that are interested in changing the dynamics. Eric Foster, question for you. When did you like 5 years ago, were you with Banks and Company then? And then when did you become like this, I don't know, like this policy guru when it came to the cannabis industry? And is this something natural to who you are? So policy, be it if it's cannabis or not, that's just something that really is natural to what you do.
So part of that's natural, and it goes to the fact of just kind of family lineage. I'm 10th generation American. My family came to Hemingway, South Carolina in roughly 1725. We were freed in 1836 when my great-great-grandpa was the only son of my great-great-great-grandpa, who was the slave owner, and he bequeathed him all the land upon his death. And so being involved is really starting back then, being involved in politics and government and the community has just been a natural. I've got relatives who are county commissioners in Williamsburg County in South Carolina and in Mecklenburg County in North Carolina. And this is just kind of natural. So growing up, having discussions about policy, about business, about economics, foreign affairs, this was just what we did. Really, I thought this is what went on in every Black household, because it wasn't just my immediate family, but it was my cousins, my extended cousins, in-laws, and on my father's side, it was equal representation. I really found out upon growing up that we were the unicorn. And so part of this is trying to help expand that so that there's more unicorns out there in our community that know more. That being said, so this is my second go round with Lloyd and the company. I was with the company briefly for about a year, coming out of a divorce and the dissolution of a former company that I owned with my second ex-wife. And 5 years ago, I was in a rough patch in terms of financially, economically. I was homeless for a little bit of time, I'll be honest. And so I was able, though, with the help of friends, to be able to get back on my feet and go back to the corporate sector for a while and work and add to my skill set of operational management, of market analysis, of human behavioral dynamics in terms of how do you engage and manage diverse personalities. So then Lloyd was able to offer me an opportunity to come back, which was making more than what I was making back in the corporate sector. praise God for that.
Praise
So
God.
I came back happy. And the company had already started in the commercial marijuana sector. So me coming back at that time, we were doing more municipal level work with respect to zoning issues and local approvals here in Michigan, primarily in the city of Detroit, and community engagement. So coming on board, we talked and strategized and decided we need to go bigger. And in going bigger, one of the things was reaching out to M4MM
Yeah.
because we needed to become a part of associations and groups. And that's what led us to you.
Yeah.
Originally actually, I talked with you before I even talked with your Michigan chapter president
Okay.
about joining M4MM and about being active. We became members then. And this has been a great place to work and connect and learn. I met Natalie through here, through Eric, one of the events you did on hemp and what was going on in the hemp industry from a regulatory side. And then met Simone in Grand Rapids when we were mutually lobbying up there for some clients. And it's just kind of taken off from there.
Yeah, I mean, and it's been a beautiful, just a bit of, pardon me, been a beautiful marriage of just good folks coming together and having that. I think the one thing that we want to remind everybody that's out here is that if you don't have a good working knowledge of policy in your respective state and understanding, Simone told you that she had to go to Eric and be like, hey, coach me up. Because what happens is that you go, either if you're advocating or if you're going to speak on someone's, behind someone's podium, or you are sharing via webinar or virtual, you got to know that stuff. You got to know what's going on and respectfully in your state, in your locality. And Lloyd, from your perspective, the strength of building a business that's surrounding policy issues, and how do you sell your service to people that don't even understand how important this policy is? And how did you build a business, the infrastructure of your business, of being able to just be now a go-to when it comes to some of these different government affairs, lobbying, policy, and all that kind of good stuff?
So as you know, Roz, this space is really interesting. One, this space is normally by a certain demographic that would take advantage of these kind of services. One, they don't believe they can afford it, and normally our fees, are pretty high depending on what the situation or circumstance is. And so I think we've done a really good job of helping to educate people understand how important the policy side. So you can do, be it, and because of background, I'm used to advocating for youth. I'm used to advocating for the community. I'm used to dealing with issues as it relates to health. And so as long, when you start to help people understand that I can give you all the strategy in the world, but if we don't change the policy, if we don't change the tone, if we don't create the narrative differently than what it is, it will be the same thing, because at the end of the day, it's law that impacts everything that we do as a society. And so that kind of education, that kind of sale, there were many times that even Eric and I and others have gone just to do the education part. No charge, just to talk about it, because people need, especially our people. And so when I first got in, Roz, I knew nothing about cannabis. As you can imagine, my wife was like, you're going to be doing what? And so she's education. She's got a PhD in education. So she's like, what are you talking about? Why are we doing this? And so when I explain to people how easily transferable the skills are, and I don't have to be, first thing people say, are you going to be smoking weed? I've never smoked it, don't have to understand the needs of a community and why it's so important on the medical side, even why it's important on the recreation side. And so that constant education, and Eric does it naturally. That's what our entire team does. I always tell people it's more than just Eric. Eric is the best resource, and I will go to battle for him any day of the week. But I do have a really solid team of individuals, that get this, that support Eric, that services a lot of what we do. But Roz, the key has been education, and it's still, we have to explain that. It's interesting, and I'll be real candid. It's easy for me to go get a contract with a white firm any day of the week as it relates to being able to push policy, knowing that they have a need for it, than it is any other minority group, including us, because we don't always get it. But I'm hoping that as we continue to educate people, especially in the cannabis space, that if you don't understand and know this policy, you're going to be left behind. We tried to do it even, and hopefully Eric has mentioned to Simone and you, Roz, that the Chicago is facing some of those same challenges. And we have to, it's going to be some issues as it relates to cannabis if they don't think about redoing or knowing that they have power to make amendments and to change, the narrative. So
right. I think, and this goes back to Natalie in your situation in Mississippi, and I'm picking this up from Eric as well, Eric Foster, that what happens, and I like Eric Foster how he says it. He'll be like, he's so methodical. He's like, now what happens statutorily is how you say it, Eric?
Right. There's statutory and there's administrative rules.
Yeah, that's it.
Yes.
And so what we need to be concerned about. And Simone did a great job with our Michigan boot camp that we had. When did we have that? The earlier this year, yes. For M4MM, I'm losing track of all my times or what have you. But I think it's something important to as we talk to Natalie about Mississippi, that when you bring something on the floor, that just because statutorily it looks like it needs to be where it needs to be, it's just the administrative rules and regulations and how that plays out is so key.
Exactly. And Natalie, one thing that, I didn't get into this role in time for us to have had a conversation about it, but Mississippi's got this really strange thing. So 1992, the voters passed a constitutional amendment, that any ballot proposals or initiatives had to get 20% of their signatures from each of the congressional districts, when Mississippi had 5.
Yeah.
Now Mississippi has 4. So in getting the signatures, did anybody look back at the old map to make that geographical connection? Because it's the little things like that that unfortunately create the challenge. Because when the Supreme Court ruled against, and this is different than when, say, you had the signature proposal for voter ID. The reason why the voter ID one could stand in court is because the distribution of signatures equaled that 20% from each of the old 5 legislative districts. But in this instance, they said that the burden of having the 20% from each of the old 5 wasn't there. And so that was the reason why the Supreme Court said, the majority said, based on that, you don't meet the constitutional criteria of Mississippi law to be able to have this as a valid initiative.
And where another area where the confusion came in is because back when they did the voter ID and they had a representative for each of the congressional districts, and they're saying that because we did not have both of them are still on the books. They never purged the initial where it was 5 versus 4. So that is what they're using as a premise, the conflict, and then precedents, legal precedents versus the conflict. So the Republicans, they had put to the House to have that 5 legislative districts removed when they went to the 4, but typical Mississippi, it was just kind of went by the wayside. For example, there's still a law that's not being enforced that you can't have interracial marriages here in the state. No one enforces it, that they could if they wanted to. So I think that I came back here to Mississippi to work with the signature collection process after the initiative had already been drafted and were already in the gathering of signatures. So I can't answer your question in regards to if anyone went back to make certain. Obviously, they didn't.
Yeah.
But
so this
it's
what
And
does that
so,
so what does
and
that mean? So Eric, just to make sure we're clear for all the audience that's listening to you. So that means if there's 5 congressional districts, you had to have 20% of the voters in each 5 districts
sign
had to
petition.
sign a petition
Right.
or vote yes for the ballot initiative.
we
No,
did.
sign the petition.
Or
You have to
sign the
have
petition.
20%
Oh,
of the
okay.
signatories for the
So you,
petition
which
come
means
from each of the
so,
old 5 districts.
so
Yeah.
they put that in place so that you couldn't go to one district and get all of your signatures.
Correct.
Correct.
Got it.
Correct.
Got it.
And that was something passed in
And also,
1992.
Yeah.
and also to help clarify things as well, some states don't even have ballot initiatives. Where, you know, your citizens aren't allowed to bring ballot initiatives, right? For those people who are listening. But there are states that allow for the citizens of that state, in order to amend the constitution of that state, to bring forth ballot initiatives. So that's kind of how this is all stemming for those who are not, you know, following the conversation somewhat. Mississippi, the citizens of Mississippi got together and wanted to change their constitution. And the rules of doing that is what has now come to bear and has gotten in the way of them being able to have success of getting that ballot initiative onto the ballot for the voters to then be able to vote. In states like Florida, we had to go through that process. You know, we've gone through that process many times when it comes to adult use and recreational ballot initiatives. And again, it usually comes down to the nuances of those particular rules in order to get that ballot initiative successful. I mean, and there's 2 different stops for us in Florida, and I'm not familiar with Mississippi's process, but sometimes the first stop for us in Florida is you have to get the language of the ballot initiative approved first through signatures.
The Secretary of State. Yep.
Right.
We have to do
and then you go to the next step of getting it onto the actual ballot. So I just wanted to put that out there as well, because I know we all are knee deep in this, and some people, you know, they don't quite understand it. But
like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, but this is why it's so important to have these type of conversations and to have companies, Black companies like Banks and Company, who get this, because these things are so critical to how our states run, not just on the subject of cannabis, but on every subject that is out there. These nuances and these processes come to bear. So my question for Banks and Company as well is, for a small business, right? You know, we say all the time that if you're in the cannabis industry, you also need to be an advocate, right? You need to be politically active and motivated, and that can be costly at times. So how does the average small business take advantage of the resources and the tools that a company like Banks and Company has to be able to help advance whatever needs that they may have as well?
So, Eric, that's a great question. So one of the things is, if within their own planning, this needs to be an area of a line item in their budget for importance, because like you said, the regulatory dynamics, be it what's in constitutional law in that state, what's in statutory law, because if you had to put it in a category, there's constitutional, then statutory law, then administrative law, which is the administrative rules or implementation, and then there's appropriative decisions, the appropriations of how money is allocated. You have to understand the tax dynamics, the regulatory dynamics in terms of inspections and compliance for your industry. What are the differences between local rules and state rules for you to be able to operate and have a balance of compliance? And that's in every industry. We work in energy, we work in education. As Lloyd mentioned, death care. He also forgot to mention healthcare with pharmacy benefit management firms. There's a lot that you've got to understand about how all these different pieces work. Now, if you don't have enough in your own budget, but there's trade associations and groups like Minorities for Medical Marijuana, join them like Jenny told Forrest, run, join M4MM, join, because then they have the ability to bring on companies like us to work in states to help that collective
Yeah.
of African American business owners and others who need that work. But dealing with government is a priority because every industry that you're in, from federal down to the municipal level to the interjurisdictional governments like water authorities, lighting authorities, those are all things that impact your business. They can have anywhere from a 20% impact to a 3% impact, but in totality, governmental policy impacts anywhere from 30 to 50% of how you can operate and function legally and in compliance. And that's critical. So I want to dovetail back to Mississippi for a thing, because if the legislature does not pass an Adopt Initiative 65, you still could go back with a ballot proposal as long as you get 20% of the signatories from each of the old 5 congressional districts. That's another positive about understanding law. And even though we're not lawyers, I think I've spent enough time studying law and policy where I can go toe to toe with the best lawyers in the world and
But
accountants
it's
too.
like it's like chasing it, but it's like chasing your tail because they've already put money in for the first initiatives, and then they have to go back again. And now, I mean, it's just and like you have to go raise that money to do these type of things that you want to be able to
Can
see.
you guys hear me?
Go
Can you
ahead.
hear me, Ross? Unfortunately, guys, we can't, because when they made that ruling, the entire initiative process is no longer an option for Mississippi. So we are now one of those states that no longer have an initiative, a ballot initiative process for the citizens. They said
Wow.
the entire initiative process is now illegal and no longer valid, and that's how we lost our initiative 77 is no longer valid. And what they come out with just yesterday is that they are considering putting it on the ballot for voters through the normal legislative process, but we won't be able to vote on that until November 2022. So we've lost any ability to have an initiative here.
But here's the thing. So reading to the specific key section of the judicial opinion, because Initiative 65 was placed on the ballot without meeting the section 273 subsection 3 prerequisite, it was placed on the ballot in violation. Whether the intent was oversight or for some other reason, drafters of that section wrote a ballot initiative process. It doesn't work in a world where Mississippi has fewer than 5 representatives in Congress. To work in today's world, it will need amending something that lies beyond the powers of the Supreme Court. So here's the thing. This is why language and understanding process is key, because even though technically, quote unquote, it lies outside of today's environment with Mississippi having 4 congressional districts instead of 5, because section 273 subsection 3 is still in the Constitution. If you did come with a ballot initiative that met that standard, it could go forward because the Supreme Court said rendering that section invalid is beyond their scope. So they didn't strike like in Ohio, when Ohio struck the 15% set aside for licensing for minorities.
Yep.
They struck that provision from the law. Here in Mississippi, they didn't strike that section. So if the voters don't approve amending it, you still technically can meet that section and meet that prerequisite because it still would be on the books. And the Supreme Court didn't rule it invalid. They didn't strike it. They struck the proposal as placed on the ballot as invalid, not that particular section of constitutional law. That's why I say you have to get deep into those nuances to understand. It does require extra work if you can't get the citizens to approve changing the process, but you still could because the judges didn't strike that particular section. They say we can't.
Yeah,
The
and that's
remedy
part of the
is we
checks and
can't
balances
strike
of
it from the
government.
Constitution.
Yeah,
What you
and
say,
that's
E?
part of the check balances of government because they only have statutorial. The Supreme Court only would have the authority to strike down something that is unconstitutional. That particular language that is causing the confusion is not unconstitutional, so they couldn't strike that part down, but they could strike down. Right? Am I understanding that correctly, Eric?
Yes, yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Eric, I would love for us to talk more about this because the attorneys uh, who were well, they kind of screwed up Initiative 65, but that are working and trying to figure out what the solution is. Their word they have put out to all of the advocacy groups is that our entire initiative process has been determined to be no longer existent as a result of this Supreme Court ruling. So what I'm hearing you say is that the initiative process is still alive and well, which means if that's the case, then our Initiative 77, which the Secretary of State has said is no longer valid, is still alive and well. So I definitely would like to speak with you all.
And
And,
now
and there we go, Banks and Company. Bam.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but we do
but-
know sometimes a little bit more than the attorneys.
Right.
And
And I say all
here's
this
the
to
other
say,
thing too, Natalie, is that you guys are going to have to also understand that just because it is still alive and well to use those terms, but just because it's there, it doesn't mean it won't go unchallenged, right? There are going to be interpretations of that law that are going to say that it is no longer allowed to be used. This may very well have to go back to the Supreme Court in order for it to go through. It will not be like you said, it's going to be more work. It's still a long battle ahead. But that's the type of tenacity that we as advocates have to be ready to fight that battle continuously, because sometimes it does look like something is done and it's not, and there are other pathways to keep moving it forward.
I'm excited now because November 2022 is just like, are you kidding me?
Are you kidding me? Exactly.
Now giving me, it's gotten me excited that we may get this back.
So what I will tell you is that the entry point is M4MM being an advocacy group weighing in, but the wraparound is that you guys need to be working with Banks and Company and allow those folks who really want this to take place in Mississippi to contract with our policy gurus that can help them understand how to piece this together. And I think when you look at what Simone, when you were in Michigan, weren't there several nuance driven issues in Michigan with some of their statutory, even now, the bill in Michigan is not perfect and it still needs some work, correct?
Oh, very much so. When I actually, when I came into Michigan, one thing, I think that really built a really big bond between myself and Banks and Company, because I was very, very green. I did not know, I knew very, very little about the industry. And I got introduced, I met Eric, and then I ended up meeting Lloyd, and I celebrate Lloyd from keeping me out of jail on a lot of occasions. Lloyd, I would be like, we can do this. And Eric would be like, yeah, Lloyd said that could get us all in trouble. Okay, great. So
Thank you, Lloyd.
Oh my God. Look, I tell Eric all the time, I owe Lloyd I was mad at Lloyd for a very long time. And then maybe 6 months later, I was like, oh, I didn't go to jail. Okay, great. So we're not supposed to do this. So there were so many layers going on, and there still are with legislation as far as Michigan as a whole, right? And so as we're moving forward with this, when I actually started, you got to remember, Michigan is the place where one person convinced 11 of his friends it was a good idea to kidnap the governor. I mean, this is a very interesting place. right? It's hard to get 12 people to agree on dinner, and all y'all agreed it was a good idea to go and get the governor. So even when I first started in this industry, I had death threats, everything, because we were really trying to bridge the gap between the community, social equity, stakeholders, what the state was wanting, and all of this other stuff. And it was extremely, extremely difficult. Fast forwarding now to 3 years now, I think we have a more robust agenda for social equity. We have a more robust agenda for obtaining licensing, but have we done it right? Absolutely not. I think we still are creating situations that just become bureaucratic initiatives of, you know, we want to plug in, we want to do the easy thing. One thing that I would like to share with everyone is that, of course, public policy is extremely important on your local and your state level as we talk about cannabis, but also we have to understand what the role of the state is, right? So the state's job is to come up with these statutes. Eric tells me all the time, Simone, you do know that there's still legislation that says that you can't park your horse 3 blocks away from your house. So it is our job to be able to put in these initiatives. That was one of the things for the Michigan marijuana market, is that our job is to be able, they create the party, but our job is to actually invite the people to come in. And so it takes one and the same to be able to do that. So we can't just totally, although those layers have to be there, we have to be the ones that champion these ideas to educate, get the word out there, and actually participate in the market.
Roz, just to Simone's point, the other piece that we also have to remember is, and adding on to what she said, is the PR element. The groundswell is just as important. So I like to look at it as parallel tracks, that when you're looking at policy, you also have to build a group of stakeholders, and you have to look at it from a PR perspective and get the right people engaged and together on this particular issue and voice your concerns. You have to do it in a big way, you have to do it in a small way, but it's so important to make sure those kind of issues are front and center. You have to contact media. You have to do your social media platforms.
Yes.
The information must get out, and people have to advocate, but you have to be able to engage people to do that.
And I tell you one thing that Simone gets me, she gets, and then I'm coming right straight to you, Natalie, after this point. But one thing Simone gets me, she's like, Rob, they know who I am. I made sure that every initiative if they was talking about money, stocks, and weed, they was talking about me. And I didn't, and I wanted them to know who I was, and I knew that was a big, big thing. And even with the initiatives now, I ain't no rocket scientist. I ain't do nothing but recreate what Roz did. But I took notes, and I figured that if I can get the attention of the stakeholders, the state, the corporations, and the community, I can be one of the most influential people in the room. And what they wanted, whether they are, and I would give them 2 choices: either you give me what I want, or you gonna give me what I want. Oh, I'm gonna tell them. I'm gonna tell them. You want me to tell everybody? All right, I'll tell everybody. I'm gonna tell them.
Right.
That was it. But Natalie, that's a great segue, because talk about your coalition of folks. We know Ivory, and shout out to Ivory with the Cannabis Nurses of Color organization. You guys have been, like, I've been getting calls from people in Mississippi and trying to connect and staying abreast of what needs to be done. Talk about that, the work that you guys have done on the ground game.
Yeah, we have a lot of, as I mentioned earlier, we have a lot of different groups that are collaborating. For example, just so everyone who's watching in Mississippi, or if you want to come to Mississippi to support, we have a Stand Up for Mississippi Voters. We have a rally at the Supreme Court on Monday where various groups and people are coming from Louisiana and Alabama, where they just passed a legalization to support us and gain in our attempts to force the governor to hold a special session to bring Initiative 65 back alive. So organizations such as the Mississippi Cannabis Trade Association, of course, M4MM, MAACP. So we are all working together. 3MA, as I said, that's the group that led the initiative here in Mississippi. They are giving us weekly, daily updates on what their attorneys are doing and meeting with the legislators. And also, as I said, we have State Representative DeKeither, who is going to who's also working to call for a special session for us. So the one thing we don't want here, though, is for the proponents of 65A to start rearing their head, because theirs was very, very restrictive.
Yes.
So we are trying to keep their initiatives, and now they have the platform of, see, if you guys had approved our 65A, this would be the backstop, because we were anticipating that the Supreme Court would rule in the manner that they did. So we're trying.
And we don't. And just for the record, everybody, Mississippi had two different initiatives: 65A, 65B. A is what Natalie was speaking, was very restrictive. And it wasn't taking into account social justice, social equity. It wasn't even having those type of conversation. It was really corporate driven and really tight with lots of barriers. And so what we don't want to happen is new states who are coming on board with medical programs or adult use. This plan is for the people. Allow it to be able to serve the people and allow the people to serve it. And so that's just one of the really key things that we should be thinking about. Lloyd, any recommendations that you can give to Natalie? And Natalie, what I'll do is, I know that you got this rally on Monday offline. I'll call you. I'll figure out somewhere UPS, and I'm gonna overnight you a whole bunch of T-shirts, social justice, M4MM T-shirts, and let's get our people organized. And I don't care. It's just something about you just say, you know what? You're not gonna just discount us. As a matter of fact, we're gonna be here, but we also gonna have to take the time to be dressed alike and show you how much this means to us. So let me get that out to you, and we'll overnight it so that you have it for Monday.
And Natalie, any media, I don't know how connected you are with the media, but as much as there's ways and angles to be able to share the story so that they understand the importance. And speaking of it, we're in this climate with diversity, equity, and inclusion. And for a media camera not to show up, given that this has, this is not helping a certain segment of people. And the more you press on those kind of issues and get the story out and get them there so that they can spread the story, makes a huge difference with your rallies.
Yeah.
One other thing too, Natalie. So going back, and I understand why, and this is sometimes the lack of creativity of people, and sometimes it's purposeful lack of creativity. So the reason why the lawyers are saying that, oh, well, we're done, is because in part of the ruling, the court said that the initiative was insufficient and held that any subsequent proceedings regarding the initiative are void, which means that if you try to appeal the suit in their perspective to, say, the federal courts, that the federal courts should not take this up. But they still did not strike that section of the Constitution, 273, subsection 3, Article 15, or Article 15, subsection 3. And in 2009, the AG for the state rendered a legal opinion that initiative sponsors could still get initiatives on the ballot as long as they get the requisite 20% of their signatures from the 5 former congressional districts. So, ergo, henceforth, and whither thou, there's still opportunity. And unfortunately, the closed-mindedness of folks, or maybe the just lack of not reading everything, is when people tell you, oh, well, we can't. That's one of the things that we, I believe, are helping through M4MM, like in the Arizona conversation, with respect to those administrative rules and the fact that there's significant improvement in the draft that just came out versus the draft they initially came out, based on the 10-page piece we put together, the policy brief, to say, fix this, change this, address this. And they did a lot of it. They still got things they need to do, but don't let anybody tell you that it can't be done. You still
right.
have a remedy based on the Constitution, because unless the court strikes and severs that out of the Constitution, and they said that they can't. They can do it if it was statutory law. They can't, and that's what happened in Ohio. Ohio, they struck because it was statutory law, not a constitutional amendment.
Yep.
There's a difference. Courts can't strike constitutional amendments. They can only be changed by legislative action. But if it's statutory law, which was passed by the legislature, then courts can strike that. That's a step down. Just like the federal government is over the state government's supremacy clause in the Constitution. State constitutions take precedence over state statutory law. So come on, guys.
That's right.
Y'all need to get some more creative folks down there to help y'all, and maybe y'all need to bring us down there to help them help y'all.
Well, we're gonna make this connection. So Natalie, I'm gonna make sure you get connected to Eric Foster. We've got to our, like, man, an hour has flown by.
Yeah, you know what, Roz? I'm sorry, I gotta take one more. I gotta give one more question to Eric, Simone, and Natalie. And I know we're gonna go over a little bit. But
all right, well, and I may have to check out because I got another piece going on. So if you see me check out, just close it up. But make sure we know how to reach out to Simone and Natalie, their businesses, because we want to support them as well. But what's your question, E?
Yeah, my question is really and truly, I mean, Eric said something earlier about seeing M4MM as a platform to move things forward. And I know Simone has spoken many times about how M4MM has been, you know, her platform, and Natalie as well. And I just want y'all to share again, because we're celebrating our 5-year anniversary. And I want, you know, other people to recognize, you know, there have been organizations and institutions in our past that have driven our narratives forward. And M4MM is one of those, I think, for our time period. But I want you guys each to kind of talk about how you feel, where you see the importance of a vehicle like M4MM, and not just the conversation for today, but down the road as well.
I'll go first, and I'll be quick. So when I first got into the industry and I wanted to build this brand, one of the things that I Googled, they said, you know, if you want to build a brand, it's cool for you to talk about that, but it's always better to get involved with something that's bigger than yourself. Right. And so luckily, blessed, I got into M4MM. Now, understand this. If you are getting into the cannabis industry because you want money and you just like weed, that ain't enough. It's not enough. Public policy changes, people change. There are people that I knew that were topping this game 2 years ago. Cricket, silence. I haven't seen them. I work some days, and Eric knows, some days I work 6-7 days a week. Some days, it was some instances that I went 37 days straight. The thing that I'm telling you is, you have to the only way to stay in this is that you are working for something that was bigger than you. So the advocacy and all of the work that we've done, I knew that I was doing not only things that to be able to help myself, but to be able to help others. The last part is that M4MM allowed me to open up doors for me that I could have never. We have the largest suite of products because we've partnered with the National Cannabis and Inclusion Association, where Roz had me appointed as a board of directors. Being on M4MM, I'm constantly in rooms, or someone is talking about me in rooms that I probably would have never been able to get into. Opening up doors and creating opportunities for my brand ambassadors. And then for my brand, and for us to be able to sit on the social equity work groups for the MRA. None of that would have been possible if it was only just me. So being a part of this organization has been amazing. It has catapulted myself as a national figure. It has catapulted my business, and it gave me one of my newest best friends, who I love to death, my main man, Eric Foster, and Mr. Lloyd, who keeps me out of jail.
Natalie, you go next.
So much of what Simone has said, you know, resonates with me, because that's my feelings as well, is that the platform that M4MM has given me to connect with business partners, people who are looking to enter the industry. With my story, I entered the industry in what I would consider to be a non conforming way where I had to find a soft entry, being in an illegal a state where cannabis is pretty much illegal, and even hemp is still listed as a nefarious plant, even though it's legal in the made legal in the 2018 Farm Bill. So what M4MM has given me is that a platform, connections, education, introduction to new ideas and ideologies of how to expand and stay relevant in the market, and most importantly, connecting to people to help them, especially from the social justice and equity perspective. So our group in Mississippi, we have about, I want to say we're up to almost 500 members. They may not be present here in the state, but they have connections, and most African Americans in the U.S. has some tie or lineage out of the state of Mississippi. So it's very important that working with M4MM that we continue to touch those people and introduce to them the possibility and the strength of a collective. And that is what's so important about M4MM for me, and how it has assisted me.
From
I love
Banks
that.
and
I
Company
love that.
oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
So from Banks and Companies, and this has been an opportunity for us to continue to build our brand credibility. Sometimes, and I use the beginning of Donnie Brasco when Sonny Black was telling Donnie that I got to vouch for you. That's how you get into the crew. You know, if I say you my guy, you're good. That's what M4MM has done for us in this particular space. And as we look to build our company brand and portfolio, we've had these sorts of relationships. We have a similar one with Clean Energy Business Network and the American Petroleum Institute in the energy space, where those sorts of relationships help build your company credibility so that you can build stronger relationships, generate more sales, but have people that validate you as somebody who brings solutions to the table, is credible, and will follow through on your word. M4MM has been that for us here in the commercial marijuana industry. And we hope to have been able to be that so far and continue to be that with our expertise for M4MM, because the challenge has been we're not usually in these policy discussions the way we need to be with people who can write policy, can write the legislation, the statutory language, or the constitutional amendments, or the administrative rules, or write how the appropriations should be defined in those appropriation bills for the money to be spent. That's a core thing of what we do at Banks and Company for different industries. Being able to help bring that through M4MM strengthens M4MM's credibility. It can deliver things that other trade groups in the industry can't, but it's what's needed. You know, having press conferences to say there's a problem and we don't like what's happening, that doesn't mean anything. Are you in the room negotiating, giving the language, debating back and forth? What will come out of Arizona's administrative rules for their social equity licensing is going to be much better. It's still not where it needs to be, but damn it, it's going to be a whole lot better, a whole lot more defined and clearer for people in Arizona. Same thing in Nevada. Alabama's come online. We got to do the same thing down there. Mississippi, we got to get y'all back, either if they don't bring it through the legislature, which knowing Mississippi, I doubt they will, unfortunately. And if the voters don't go on ahead and support the rewriting the Constitution, which probably since 88% of the white voters in Mississippi vote for Republicans, and they're anti-voting, anti-referendums, anti-people's voice, they may not roll with y'all. You can bring this back based on the way that the court ruled and the AG's ruling, and just make sure that the signatures are representative of each of the 5 old congressional districts. That's the type of work we got to do. And we hope we can add that value to M4MM.
Yeah, and you know what? We have we definitely want to thank you and Mr. Lloyd. I know he had to drop off. We appreciate you guys, all the work you've been doing, and we're so excited to have you now as a part of the M4MM family. Simone, Natalie, y'all know how much we already love y'all and everything that y'all do respectively in your states for your communities. But then more importantly, you two women are some of the brightest minds I've seen in this space. Y'all have businesses that are, doing well, and you guys are really the epitome of what our organization represents and what we stand for. So I thank all of you, each of our guests today, for all of our listeners out there. We thank y'all for joining us weekly. Again, this has been another fire conversation. I know we went a little bit longer than normal, but that's usually how we do it when we got such good guests on, and we want to thank everybody. So again, thank y'all for tuning in. But y'all know my message every week is always the same. Go home, love on yourself, love on your family this weekend, because come next week, Monday morning, we got plenty of work to do, as Mr. Eric Foster has laid out for us. And so we're going to keep grinding on this, and we're going to keep building. And we thank everybody for joining us. So until next week on another episode of Can I Talk with Roz. Thank you, everybody, for being here, y'all.
Thanks,
Thank you all. Thank you.
Bye.